In the last video that I made, I introduced you to the work of Lev Vygotsky and his concept of the zone of proximal development. I tried to help you understand that from that zone of proximal development, we got the idea of scaffolding and how we scaffold learning when we're involved in conceptual development at any age. We take what we know and we add little bits and pieces to what we are learning about and add it, so that over time we scaffold our learning like in a ladder. In the last lecture, I also talked a little bit about the concept of constructivist knowledge creation. Lev Vygotsky opened up the door to thinking about how we acquire knowledge that helps us scaffold our learning, how we acquire knowledge, skills, and affect. We know, as teachers, we assume that we have a role to play. But what Vygotsky introduced us to, and what Jean Piaget, who we're going to talk a little bit about today, helped us understand, was that we construct knowledge. And we construct that knowledge with other people in a variety of different situations. All learning involves give and take between, for want of a better way to describe it, a stimulus and a response, or from seeing something and then thinking about it and putting it together with what we already know. But somebody helps to lead us in that direction. We very seldom, in the early years, put two and two together on our own. We need others to help us, to give us some of those things that we need to play around with to help us acquire new knowledge and grow our knowledge and our skills and our affect. That's the essence of what constructivist knowledge creation is. We are provided with the opportunity to construct knowledge by going from point A to point B, the zone of proximal development. What Piaget helped us understand was that we're not ready to go from point A to point B necessarily at every age. It's no strange coincidence that we learn how to read after we've done other things. So Piaget, in trying to understand this and thinking about all of the other intellectual currents taking place in Europe in the early years of the 20th century, suggested that all of us go from the concrete to the abstract in our thinking. We need to understand something at the concrete level before we can use it and abstract about it. So for instance, when we're learning, when a little baby, or not a little baby, a toddler begins to learn about a table, for instance, the table is a solid thing. It is an artifact. It is something that is concrete. When they have experienced what a table can do, when they've written on a table, when they've seen a table being taken apart and put back together again, when they've learned that the word table applies not just to a writing surface, but to what they eat at home and what they eat at a restaurant, then they're able to start to think about a table from an abstract point of view. We cannot think abstractly if we don't understand the concepts that we need. Piaget drove us to understand that in order to think using our minds, we need to have those concepts become abstract. And so over time we go from concrete to abstract. If you think about how that plays out in the classroom, for instance, when we're trying to learn or when we're trying to teach students how to count and understand the concept of numbers, we start with things that they can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. 1 orange, 2 oranges, 3 oranges, 4 oranges, 5 oranges. 1 colored red bar, 2 colored red bars, and so forth. The classroom teacher in the early years puts as many concrete things in front of the student to use to begin to understand the concept of number. Over time, that concept of number becomes something that they can visualize in their head or to think about. So when we learn how to add, if I have 3 cookies, here are 3 cookies, here are 3 pictures of cookies, and I add 2 more cookies to that, how many cookies do I have? If I have a loaf of bread in the freezer and there are 20 slices of bread and somebody comes in and makes sandwiches and uses 3 slices of bread, or 6 slices of bread rather, how many slices do I have left? Little by little, we learn to go from the concrete to the abstract. And it's the same with every concept. When we are in the classroom and we're talking about things that happen at home and things that happen at school, sometimes we expect the students to be able to think abstractly about something that they have no concept of. And just like the zone of proximal development frustrates the students when they're asked to go beyond their level of understanding or their level of performance, being asked to think abstractly about something before they have developed a concrete idea that they can point to and they can see, they become frustrated as well. So pedagogically, 2 things to remember when it comes to literacy learning. We can't expect students to function beyond their zone of proximal development. We can't expect them to understand something that they haven't had a chance to play around with, to look at, to deconstruct and put back together again. The other thing, we need to provide them with opportunities, and we as the classroom teachers need to provide our students with the opportunities to experience concretely those concepts that they will later need to understand abstractly. That's why we have a water table in a kindergarten classroom, and a sand table, and pails, and measuring tools, and scales to weigh things. Because in order to understand, for instance, a concept like mass or volume, we need to help them play around with filling and emptying containers so that they begin to understand what it means to weigh something and what it means to have volume or to take up space. Constructivist knowledge creation means experiencing the world in a concrete way so that we can then think abstractly about those same things later on.